Ladies and gents, my name is Xander, aka Deislayers, and in this video, we're going to go ahead and do a comprehensive comparison analysis of the Mida multi-tool versus the Purpose versus the Nameless Midnight Scout Rifles, and find out which one of these three Kinetic Scout Rifles is truly the best in this entire game. Now the main reason that we're doing this is because my very good friends Luwaka Waka and Christopher Jacobs asked us to do exactly this. There's a couple of you other Guardians out there who want this exact same type of video, and unfortunately I couldn't find your comments, but nevertheless, this is for you guys, and it's such a great video idea to do, because all three of these scout rifles are extremely powerful and can be deadly and lethal within the Crucible and PvP environments. Now, what exactly is this going to entail? Well, this comparison analysis is not just going to compare their PvP stats, but also their base stats and find out how similar and dissimilar that each one of these things are in terms of their range, stability, and whatnot. But we're also going to compare the weapon's perks and how each one of these perks is going to affect the weapon in PvP, including flinch factors and other types of topics like this. The only thing left to do is to hit this for that subscribe button, and let's jump right into the video. As many of you Deislayers already know, one of the very first things that I love to do whenever I get a request like this is I love to look at these weapons' PvP stats, and what I mean by that is their optimal time to kill for not just headshots but also body shots, and see exactly how much critical damage that these things are doing for a headshot and a body shot respectively. So as you guys can see right here on the screen, I've compiled this all into one simple screenshot so that you can see exactly how they differ from one weapon into the next. We see that the Mida and the Purpose have the exact same stats across the board, and that's because these two weapons are in the exact same archetype. However, the Nameless Midnight has some different stats, and that's because it has a little bit of a lower rate of fire, but yet at the same time it has a little bit of a higher impact. One thing that you guys are really going to notice is that the optimal kill time on the Mida and the Purpose is at 1.2 seconds, whereas the Nameless Midnight is only at 1.33 seconds. It should also be noted that it's going to take exactly 4 critical headshots and 1 body shot to attain this for the Purpose and the Mida, but the Nameless Midnight only takes 3 critical headshots and 2 body shots. So right here we can already see that the Nameless Midnight has a little more of a leniency in comparison to the Purpose and the Mida to get this actual critical kill time. However, it should also be noted that the body shot kill time is very different from the Purpose and the Mida in comparison to the Nameless Midnight, which is exactly 1.8 for the Purpose and the Mida and 1.67 for the Nameless Midnight. This is very important, which also states once more that you have to be much more precise with the Purpose and the Mida in comparison to the Nameless. The very last thing that I want to point out here is that for the Purpose and the Mida, you need exactly 7 body shots to attain this optimal body shot kill time at 1.8 seconds. Inversely related to this, we have the Nameless Midnight, and that only takes 6 body shots and has an even faster body shot kill time at 1.67 seconds. So from all this information, we can clearly see that the Purpose and the Mida have the best optimal kill times, but the Nameless Midnight has an advantage in overall leniency when we're comparing all three of these weapons. Now that you guys have a pretty decent understanding of all these weapons' exact PvP stats, along with their optimal time to kills and whatnot, the next thing that I want to take a look at is these weapons' base stats. The reason why base stats are so important for you guys to understand is that these base stats determine how well a weapon functions and how it feels to each individual Guardian, and how that couples with each one of your playstyles. So some of the factors that we have got to take a look at is range, stability, handling speed, along with reload speed, and of course aim assistance and recoil direction. So as you guys can see right here on the screen, we have the Mida, Purpose, and Nameless Midnight going from left to right. The very first thing that I want to point out here is these weapon stability factors, as we have a stability factor of 50, 50, and 44 going from left to right on the screen. So right here we can already see that the Mida and the Purpose are much more stable in comparison to the Nameless Midnight. One other factor that you've got to take into account is these weapons' range factors, as the Mida has a 50, 42, and 46 factors going across the board once again. So right here, the Purpose is the weakest in the overall range, whereas the Mida is the most in its optimal range, and the Nameless Midnight is right in between. For those of you who have a very aggressive playstyle, one thing that you're really going to want to take into account is the handling speed on each one of these weapons, as that's really going to determine your aiming down the sight time. With the Mida, you have 86, the Purpose you have 72, and the Nameless Midnight you have 47, which indicates that all three of these weapons are going to be very different from one thing to the next in terms of how aggressive that you can actually be. For the Mida and the Purpose, you can be very aggressive just based on this handling speed alone, whereas the Nameless Midnight is more for in the back and picking up Guardians at a distance. Something else that's very important to a very aggressive or passive playstyle is these weapons' reload speeds. The reason why reload is so important to note is because the reload stat is really going to determine as to how often or how frequently that you can reload. Of course, this seems very basic, but reloading a weapon is exceptionally important, and that's because with these kind of high rate of fire weapons, you're going to burn out of bullets extremely fast, and because of this, you also need a reload stat that's going to be just as fast. So with the Mida multi-tool, we have a reload stat 82 out of 100, followed by the Purpose at 60, and the Nameless Midnight at 50. So once again, we can see that these three stats really determine as to how aggressive that you can be, and it also indicates that once again, the Mida and the Purpose are meant for very aggressive playstyles, whereas the Nameless Midnight isn't quite so fast, and that's why it's more for a passive playstyle. The very last thing that I want to point out here is these weapons' aim assistances, as the aim assistance on the Mida is at 100 out of 100, followed by the Purpose at 72, and the Nameless Midnight at 62. So once again, here we see a vast difference from one weapon aim to the next, and one you also might feel as if the Mida is very sticky, and then comes the Purpose followed by the Midnight, and that's because of this aim assistance factor and how it couples very nicely with that recoil direction. With aim assistance, recoil direction, as well as the stability factors, these three things determine as to how sticky or as to how crispy a weapon might feel, and with all these three things combined, we can clearly see that the Mida has the highest factors, followed by the Purpose, and then of course the Nameless Midnight, and that's just because of the very simple fact that when you average all three of these stats together, this is the order in which they come in. Having covered each one of these weapons' base stats, you guys can kind of get an idea of their playstyles just based on how different that these weapons are in terms of all of these actual stats. You can see that some of them are designed for a very aggressive playstyle, whereas other ones are designed for more of a passive playstyle, and that's solely based on these weapons' base stats. Now what reinforces this even more is some of these weapons' perks, and let me explain exactly how. So the very first two perks that I want to take a look at is one that's called High Caliber Rounds and Explosive Payload. High caliber rounds can be found on the Mida multi-tool, whereas explosive payload can both be found on the Purpose as well as the Nameless Midnight. The main reason I want to compare all three of these perks is because of one key fact, and that is the flinch factor. All three of these weapons perks determine as to how much flinch that weapon can give, and for the Mida as well as the Purpose and as well as the Nameless Midnight, this flinch factor is very different from one thing into the next. If I had to say which one of these three flinch factors was actually the most, I would have to go with explosive payload, and that's because in this last update that was just given in December, we now know the high caliber rounds got even less of a flinch factor, which wasn't even that great to begin with. So for this reasoning and this logic, we can clearly see that the Purpose and the Nameless Midnight have much more of a flinch factor in comparison to the Mida multi-tool. The very next thing that I want to point out is one of these weapons perks called the Mida multi-tool perk, followed by that of lightweight frame, and of course, precision frame. All three of these perks determine as to how fast that you can move with one of these weapons, and with the Purpose and the Mida multi-tool, you get a speed increase with each one of those intrinsic perks, whereas with precision frame on the Nameless Midnight, this only controls the weapon's vertical recoil, and yes, that is a very nice buff, but what I will also have to note here is that having that additional speed bonus is so much more of an advantage, and the reason is because that comes into play into taking the map control whenever you're playing competitive game modes like Trials, such as that of Countdown or Survival. These perks also determine as to how aggressive or passive that you can be with one of these weapons, and so if you have a very passive playstyle, then once again, the Nameless is the way to go, because again, you had that very nice recoil control that's going to allow you to hit lots of headshots from a distance, whereas the Purpose and the Mida had that speed increase to give you the more of that aggressive playstyle, and you guys all know that that's exactly what I love to do. The very last thing that I want to discuss about each one of these weapons in terms of their overall perks is one that's unique to each one of these weapons respectively. With the Mida multi-tool, you have a wonderful perk called Mida Radar, and that means that the radar stays active while aiming down your sights. This is a marvelous perk that simply cannot be found on any other weapon in this game, and that's why it's so powerful, because you can go ahead and aim down your sights and never ever lose radar. That's something that simply cannot be done on the Purpose or the Nameless, and it's one of the reasons as to why the Mida is such a huge powerful weapon in PvP, and that's because we always need radar 24/7. The more often that you can have your radar, the more map awareness that you're also going to have, and that also includes teammate awareness, which is really going to give you guys a huge advantage on when to push and when not to. Taking a quick look at the Purpose, one perk that's found only on this particular scout rifle in comparison to the other three is one that's called Slide Shot, and Slide Shot partially reloads the weapon's magazine and temporarily boosts range and stability at the exact same time. For me, my aggressive playstyle, I always use this perk, and it's fantastic because not only do I get that boost in range and stability, but every single slide, I also get 3 rounds back into my magazine. I cannot tell you the number of times that this has come into play for me because, as I said, I'm very aggressive, and so I really don't have that much time to reload. because I'm not reloading that often, having this slide shot perk on here to get more bullets back into the magazine is extremely exceptional and phenomenal to get lots of headshots into down multiple guardians without ever having to reload. Once again, changing shifts to that of the Nameless Midnight, the one perk that I want to discuss about this weapon is that it has steady rounds. And steady rounds is exactly what you want to have because it increases the recoil control, greatly increasing stability while giving a minor decrease in range. The reason why steady rounds is such a great perk to have in this weapon is because once again, it reinforces the fact that this weapon is meant to be played at a distance and not to have an aggressive playstyle. This thing is all designed around that stability factor, and having on a very big stability factor, it's going to give you a lot of headshots, and it's going to allow you to have a very high chance of getting the best optimal kill time whenever using the Nameless Midnight. By taking a look at all of these factors, we can clearly see that the Nameless Midnight is designed for one playstyle, and that's to be very passive. In contrast to this, if you have a very aggressive playstyle, then the Mida multi-tool or the purpose is great, and that's because these weapons can be used in both that close range combat or far range combat, and that's why I like to use one of these two weapons in contrast to the Nameless Midnight. All in all, if I had to say which one of these three weapons was the best among the three, I go with the Mida, followed by the purpose, and then of course the Midnight. The reason why I say this in this order is because the Mida is an exotic for a reason. Not only can you have your radar constantly active 24/7, but it's also got high caliber rounds for a decent flinch factor, but it also has the best base stats by far in comparison to the other three weapons. It's got the best handling, it's got the best range, it's got the best aim assistance, and it's even got the best reload speed, almost as if it has Outlaw, and for all these things combined, the Mida multi-tool is by far the best. Now, if we were to look at just the two legendary weapons, I would certainly say that the purpose is the best of the two, and that's because, once again, it's got the best flinch factor, it has better base stats than that of the Nameless Midnight, and for these factors alone, you can also have on slide shot, allowing you to even boost that range and stability even more, and that's why it's such a great weapon to use for both the far and close range engagements. Now, this certainly does not mean that the Nameless Midnight is a bad weapon, because obviously, it can still clearly hold its own in the Crucible, and it really just depends on the person who's using it and their playstyle in which they prefer. Now, I know that you guys are not going to have the exact same preference and playstyle that I do, so by all means, let me know your guys' thoughts and logic and reasoning on which one of these three weapons that you believe is the best down in the comment section below, because I know one thing's for sure, I'm certainly going to be looking forward to reading all those comments and seeing your guys' exact thoughts. In addition to this, let me know down in the comment section once more which kind of comparison analysis or verses that you guys want to see in the next video, as I love doing these things because I find them absolutely fascinating and intriguing, and I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say, as it's really going to be beneficial for not just you, but for me as well. Lastly, go ahead and check out some of my other new videos, as you guys can see right there on the screen. If you happen to enjoy this one, they're definitely going to enjoy those as well. That's pretty much all that I've got for you as of right now, and so as always, Deislayers, great gaming. Until next time.